details the Men in Black's expansion and global reach. By the late 1970s, the Men in Black were no longer just an American phenomenon. Sightings of these shadowy figures had been reported in Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and even behind the Iron Curtain in Soviet territories. The expansion suggested a shift in their operations, from a covert U.S. intelligence branch to a global force with unknown oversight. Some theorists speculated that this transformation was the result of an unofficial international agreement, possibly a secret treaty between world governments and extraterrestrial entities. While Majestic 12 had originally created the Men in Black as an offshoot to suppress and control UFO-related leaks, something had changed. Reports indicated that by the 1980s, the Men in Black were operating outside even Majestic 12's control, with agents appearing in places where the U.S. government had no jurisdiction. One such case was the 1983 Tehran Incident, where Iranian fighter pilots encountered a massive, luminous craft over the city. After the incident was declassified years later, multiple Iranian Air Force officers claimed they had been visited by strange men dressed in black suits, speaking perfect Farsi, but with no discernible accents or origins. The men confiscated radar footage, flight logs, and witness statements, despite having no official ties to any known intelligence agency. Another bizarre connection surfaced in the 1990s when researchers began linking the Men in Black to a series of secret expeditions to Antarctica. According to leaked reports, multiple research stations had recorded strange aerial activity near Lake Vostok, an ancient subglacial lake buried beneath 2 miles of ice. In 1997, a team of Russian scientists at Vostok Station claimed to have detected an enormous metallic anomaly beneath the ice, unlike any known natural formation. Shortly after their findings were leaked, the station went into total radio silence for nearly 2 weeks. When communication was finally reestablished, the lead researcher, Dr. Nikolai Antonov, was missing. The remaining team members refused to speak of what had occurred, except for one who later defected to the West, claiming that 2 Men in Black had arrived at the station via an unmarked aircraft and ordered them to cease all investigations. This revelation led some to believe that the Men in Black weren't just managing UFO cases, but were actively suppressing ancient extraterrestrial discoveries hidden beneath the Earth's surface. The 2025 event, a new phase in their agenda. The most recent and perhaps most unsettling Men in Black encounter occurred on June 23, 2025, in rural West Virginia. That night, a small town experienced an unprecedented mass visitation. An enormous triangular craft hovered silently over a local farm for nearly 40 minutes. Multiple witnesses reported seeing humanoid figures exiting the craft, observing their surroundings before vanishing into the darkness. The local sheriff's department received over 20 calls about the event, with multiple videos uploaded to social media showing an object defying gravity in ways modern aircraft couldn't. Within hours, unmarked vehicles descended upon the town. Witnesses described tall, pale men in black suits going door to door, confiscating phones, hard drives, and even handwritten accounts. Some residents who had refused to comply found their homes ransacked overnight, with their electronic devices mysteriously wiped clean. One witness, Eli Parker, a former Army intelligence officer, had secretly copied footage from his phone before handing it over. However, days later, he was reported missing, his house abandoned, and his phone signal cut off from the grid. The June 23rd event marked a disturbing evolution in the Men in Black's activities. Unlike previous cases, they weren't just silencing individuals. They were erasing an entire town's collective memory. What are they protecting? With over 7 decades of documented encounters, one question looms larger than ever. What are the Men in Black truly protecting? Are they covering up human-alien interactions on behalf of a secret government? Or is their mission more profound, perhaps preventing humanity from stumbling upon knowledge we were never meant to possess? One terrifying possibility, suggested by former insiders, is that the Men in Black aren't just protecting secrets, they're protecting us from what no one knows. What is certain, however, is that those who look too deeply into the mystery tend to disappear.
The unseen war. The meeting beneath the mountain had confirmed what the men in black already suspected. Earth was on the brink of an invasion that no government, no military, no world leader could ever prepare for. The beings lurking in the ocean's depths weren't just extraterrestrials. They were something worse. They were old. They had been here long before humans had even begun to crawl from the mud. And now, they were waking. The man who couldn't sleep.
Doctor.
Charles Whitmore hadn't slept in 3 days. Every time he closed his eyes, the memories came rushing back. Fragments of things that shouldn't exist, images that twisted and churned in his mind like a sickness. He had seen them. The creatures that lived in the abyss. It had started with an unusual sonar reading off the coast of the Mariana Trench. His research team had detected movements at a depth previously thought impossible. The Navy had long denied any interest in their findings, but within hours of submitting his final report, the phone calls began. First, they were from government agencies, faceless men who told him in polite but firm tones that his research was classified. Then the warnings became more direct. Unmarked cars parked outside his home. His emails disappeared. His colleagues refused to speak with him. And then, one night, the men in black arrived. They didn't knock. They were just suddenly inside his home. Dr. Whitmore sat frozen in his chair as two men in identical black suits stood before him, their hands resting on the table as they loomed over him like specters. Their faces were unnaturally smooth, their expressions vacant. "You will discontinue your work," one of them said. His voice was devoid of warmth, of anything remotely human. The other man leaned closer, his gaze unreadable. "If you continue, we cannot ensure your safety." Whitmore's breath came in short, shallow gasps. "You don't understand," he stammered. "Something is happening down there. These things, they're moving. They're aware of us now." The second man's expression never changed. "We are aware of them as well." Then, without another word, they turned and walked out of the room. Whitmore sat motionless for what felt like hours. The next morning, when he checked his research servers, every single file was gone. He booked a flight out of the country that afternoon. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't matter. There was nowhere he could run. The meeting in the Arctic. The air was thin and frigid atop the ice sheet, the sky above painted in streaks of green from the aurora borealis. The men in black arrived in silence, their black suits out of place against the endless expanse of white. Their presence alone was enough to unnerve the assembled scientists, but no one questioned why they were there. They were waiting. Then, without a sound, the ship arrived. It descended from the sky like a phantom. No engine, no wings, just a smooth, metallic craft that pulsed with an eerie blue glow. It hovered just above the ice before three figures emerged, tall whites. They moved with unnatural grace, their long, slender limbs gliding across the ice as if they weighed nothing at all. One of the men in black stepped forward. He was taller than the others, his movements even more precise. "We received your message," he said. "What have you found?" One of the tall whites tilted its head slightly, its luminous eyes locking onto the agent. Then, without speaking, it projected an image directly into the minds of those present. The ice. Something deep beneath it. Something shifting. The scientists gasped as the vision took hold, an enormous dark structure embedded in the ancient ice, humming with energy. Shapes moved within it, massive and alien. The thing wasn't dead. It was waiting. The tall white spoke, its voice ethereal. "You are running out of time." The lead agent nodded, unfazed. "We know." The ice beneath their feet groaned. Something was waking up. The last warning. Harold Rennick had spent his entire life chasing the truth about extraterrestrials. He had spent decades collecting testimonies, stolen government files, even tracking down former military personnel who had seen things they weren't supposed to. But no piece of evidence had ever scared him like the footage he had received 3 days ago. The video was grainy, taken from a deep-sea drone off the coast of Japan. It showed a structure, black, massive, and impossibly old, buried in the ocean floor. And then, a shape moved. Not a submarine. Not a whale. Something else. Something that shouldn't be there. He hadn't even had time to share the footage before the knock came at his door. Two men, identical black suits, identical blank expressions. "You will hand over the footage," one of them said. Rennick's mouth was dry. "Aye, there's more of it," he lied. "If I go missing, people will know." The second man stepped forward, his face unnervingly close. "Harold Rennick is already missing," he said softly. And in that moment, Rennick understood. This was not a request. This was a final warning. His hands shook as he handed over the hard drive. The man took it, slipping it into his pocket as if it were nothing more than an afterthought. "Forget," the first man said, his voice eerily calm. The men in black turned and left, disappearing into the night. Rennick never spoke of aliens again. The storm on the horizon. The secret war waged on. The men in black worked tirelessly, ensuring that humanity remained ignorant of the horrors lurking just beyond their perception. They silenced those who came too close. They erased evidence that threatened to break the illusion. But they knew the truth. The others were growing restless. The structures beneath the oceans, beneath the ice, beneath the very ground people walked on, were beginning to stir. The ancient beings that had been sealed away for millennia were no longer content to remain hidden. Something was coming, and even the men in black were running out of time. 1. The disappearance at Blackwood Ridge. The Blackwood Ridge incident was never officially recorded. It existed only in whispers, among military officers who drank too much, among scientists who had seen things they could never unsee. The town of Blackwood Ridge, nestled deep within the Colorado Rockies, had a population of just under 500. On the night of April 17th, every single resident vanished. No signs of struggle. No bodies. No footprints leading away from the town. Only the houses remained, their doors swinging open in the cold mountain wind. By dawn, the military had sealed off the area, but the ones truly in charge arrived in a sleek black car that kicked up no dust on the gravel road. 2 men stepped out, their black suits pristine despite the early morning fog. They did not question what had happened. They already knew. A surveillance drone captured something hours before the town went silent. A shape, massive and indistinct, hovering above the trees. The footage was warped, disrupted by static, but for a few frames, something else could be seen. A figure. Not human. Tall, thin, with elongated limbs and skin so pale it almost glowed. One of the men in black, Agent Carrington, watched the footage in silence before glancing at his partner. "It's begun," he said. The other man nodded. "Erase it." Within hours, the footage was deleted. The town of Blackwood Ridge was declared an environmental hazard zone. The official report stated a chemical leak had forced an evacuation. No one ever questioned it, and no one ever saw the missing residents again.
Sure.
2. The man who remembered. Jacob Hafford woke up in his own bed, but something was wrong. He couldn't remember how he had gotten there. The last thing he recalled was driving home from work, the road stretching out before him in the glow of his headlights. Then there was nothing. Just a blank space in his mind. His clock read 3:12 a.m. His head throbbed. His skin felt cold. And then he heard it. A knock at the door. Slow, rhythmic, too precise to be a random visitor. Jacob's breath hitched in his throat. He wasn't expecting anyone. The knocking came again. He hesitated, then moved toward the door. Through the peephole, 2 men stood perfectly still on his front porch, dressed in black suits. Their faces were expressionless, pale in the dim porch light. One of them tilted his head as if aware Jacob was watching. The door handle rattled. Jacob stepped back, his pulse hammering. Who are you?" A voice, smooth and unnervingly calm, spoke from the other side. "Let us in." Jacob backed away. "No." A long silence. Then the voice spoke again, softer this time. "You will forget." The words slithered into his mind like a sickness. And then, blackness. Jacob woke up 12 hours later, lying on his living room floor. The men were gone. His memories of the night, gone. But something deep inside him knew. They had been there. And they would come again. 3. The abyss watches back. A naval submarine, the USS Perseus, had been running routine scans of the Mariana Trench when it detected something strange. An anomaly. A structure buried beneath the ocean floor, pulsing with an energy signature that should not have existed. The crew never had a chance to investigate further. Within hours, the ship lost all communication. The last transmission was garbled static, interspersed with something else, something that sounded eerily like whispering. The Navy scrambled a recovery operation, but when they reached the last known location of the Perseus, all they found was wreckage, torn apart from the inside. Days later, a lone survivor was found, drifting in a life raft miles from the incident site. Lieutenant Michael Rayner. His hair had turned completely white. When questioned, he only repeated the same phrase over and over. The abyss watches back. Hours later, 2 men in black arrived at the military hospital. They entered Rayner's room without speaking. 15 minutes later, he was gone. No one ever saw him again. The meeting in the desert. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly beneath the harsh midday sun. A single black car pulled up to an unmarked building, an underground facility disguised as an abandoned warehouse. Inside, a meeting was already taking place. 4 grays sat across from 3 men in black. The air was heavy with something unspoken. Finally, one of the grays, its massive black eyes unblinking, leaned forward. "The others are preparing," it said, its voice a strange, mechanical hum. "We cannot hold them much longer." The lead agent, a man whose face seemed too smooth, too perfect, placed his hands flat on the table. "Tell us everything." The grays hesitated. "They are already among you." A long silence stretched between them. The men in black did not react. They had suspected this. They had feared this. The meeting continued for hours, discussions held in cryptic words and veiled warnings. But when the men in black finally left, they knew one thing for certain: time was running out. 4 to 5. The final omen. The sky over Washington, D.C. was unusually dark that night. No stars, no moonlight, just an oppressive blackness that swallowed the skyline. In an unmarked office building, 3 men in black sat in silence, watching a single monitor. The screen displayed an image captured from a deep space observatory. A fleet, not human, not friendly, moving toward Earth. The room remained still. One of the men finally spoke. "It's worse than we thought." Another nodded. The third, the oldest among them, simply closed his eyes. "They are coming." And for the first time in their long, cold history, the men in black did not know if they could stop it. To be continued. The storm is building, the secrets run deeper, and the men in black remain the last line of defense against an enemy no one knows is coming.
They are listening. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly beneath the scorching sun, its vast emptiness swallowing anything that didn't belong. To most, it was nothing but barren wasteland. To those who knew better, it was home to something far more secretive than Area 51, Site S4. Daniel Grayson had spent 6 years working deep within the underground research facility, a place few knew existed. The pay was extraordinary, the security suffocating. But the things he had seen, things that shouldn't exist, had made him question everything. He had kept his mouth shut, until now. Sitting in a dimly lit motel room in Albuquerque, Grayson reviewed the documents spread across the bed. Grainy photos of disc-shaped craft, schematics of propulsion systems that defied physics, reports detailing experiments on recovered biological specimens. It was all here. Proof. A knock at the door made him freeze. It was the middle of the night. No one knew where he was. His heart pounded as he approached the door, pressing his eye to the peephole. A man in a black suit stood motionless outside, his face obscured by the shadow of his hat. A second figure waited behind him, equally still. Grayson didn't move. He barely breathed. A voice, low and mechanical, seeped through the door. "Mr. Grayson, we need to talk." Grayson backed away from the door, his mind racing. He hadn't spoken to anyone, hadn't even sent the files yet. How did they find him? Another knock, louder, more insistent. "You cannot run," the voice continued. "You cannot hide." Grayson grabbed his laptop and shoved it into his bag. The window was his only option. He threw it open, climbed out onto the fire escape, and descended as fast as he could. By the time he reached the ground, a black sedan was idling in the parking lot. The rear window rolled down. Inside sat one of them, his skin unnaturally smooth, his eyes devoid of light. "You should reconsider your actions, Mr. Grayson." Grayson turned and sprinted into the night. Flight 51 Incident. First Officer Charles Madsen thought he had put the past behind him. The UFO he had seen years ago, the visit from the black-suited men, he had stayed quiet, just as they told him. But they hadn't forgotten him. During a routine flight over Colorado, something appeared outside the cockpit window, a disc moving alongside the aircraft, matching its speed effortlessly. Then, in a blink, it was gone. As soon as they landed, 2 men in black suits were waiting. "Come with us," one of them said. Madsen didn't argue. He knew better. The Maury Island cover-up. Paul Darrow never spoke about what happened near Maury Island. Not at first. He and his crew had seen the metallic craft hovering over the water, like watched as molten debris rained down. His dog was killed. One of his men was burned. The government called it a hoax. Days later, a black car arrived at his house. A man in a perfectly tailored black suit stepped out. "You will forget," the man said. "This never happened." Darrow nodded. He understood the threat. Some things were better left unsaid. The hotel visitor. Dr. Kenneth Larson had spent years researching UFO encounters, gathering stories, analyzing government reports. He had laughed off the rumors of the men in black until one of them showed up at his hotel. The knock came at midnight. When he opened the door, a tall man in black stood in the hallway. His face was expressionless, his presence suffocating. "You must stop." Larson swallowed hard. "Or what?" The man took a step forward, and suddenly, the lights flickered, the temperature in the room dropping. "You will." The next morning, Larson's research was gone. His notes, his recordings, everything. Erased as if it had never existed. He never spoke of UFOs again. They are always watching. Grayson thought he had escaped. He had fled the motel, abandoned his car, changed his identity, but the men in black were always a step ahead. They didn't need to chase him. They let him run, because they knew, eventually, he would understand. No one leaves Site S4, and no one tells its secrets. The missing reporter. Ethan Crowley had spent a decade chasing the truth. He had spoken to whistleblowers, former government contractors, even military pilots with stories they refused to put on record. His research into Site S4 had led him down a rabbit hole of missing people, classified programs, and sightings of things that defied explanation. Then he found Daniel Grayson. Grayson's documents were the final piece, the evidence Crowley had been waiting for. He scheduled an interview at a remote cabin in northern Arizona. No phones, no Wi-Fi, no traceable connections. But Grayson never showed up. Instead, a black sedan pulled up outside. Two men stepped out, identical black suits, identical movements. One of them knocked on the door. Crowley's stomach clenched as he reached for his gun. The knock came again, louder. "Mr. Crowley," a voice called. Smooth, calm, devoid of emotion. "We know what you are looking for." Crowley didn't answer. The second man spoke. "Stop now, or disappear." Crowley stayed frozen, his grip tight on the gun. The men didn't wait for a response. They turned, got back into their car, and drove away. He had his warning. Grayson wasn't missing. He was gone. The man who forgot. Peter Nolan had no memory of the past 3 days. One moment, he had been in his office reviewing a new batch of declassified files. The next, he was waking up in his car, parked in an empty lot outside of town. His phone was missing. His laptop, too. At first, he thought he had been drugged, maybe even robbed, until he saw the mirror. Scrawled across the glass in thick black ink were 3 words, "Stop digging now." His blood ran cold. Nolan raced home, searching through his backups, his notebooks. Every trace of his research on government UFO programs, deleted. Files wiped, paper notes missing, even his hidden drives corrupted. It was as if none of it had ever existed. Then his landline rang. A voice, monotone, familiar. "You are lucky, Mr. Nolan." A long silence. "You still have your life." The line went dead. The witness in the desert. Alexis Monroe had always been skeptical of UFOs, conspiracy theories, and government cover-ups. But that was before she saw it with her own eyes. Driving home from a late shift outside of Rachel, Nevada, she had watched a glowing, disc-shaped object descend behind a ridge near Groom Lake. The next morning, 2 men in black arrived at her trailer. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't flash badges. They simply walked inside, uninvited. "You saw nothing," one of them said, his voice slow, methodical. Monroe's hands trembled. What are you talking about?" The second man tilted his head as if studying her. "There will be no second warning." They left without another word. That night, Monroe packed her bags and left town. She never spoke of the sighting again. The night visitor. Dr. Alan Reeves woke to the sound of footsteps. It was past midnight, and his house should have been empty. He reached for his bedside lamp, but before he could turn it on, a voice came from the darkness. "Do not move." Reeves's breath caught in his throat. The voice was calm, unnatural. Then the figure stepped forward. A man, dressed in a black suit, his face pale and expressionless. His eyes, too dark, too empty, reflected no light. "You are interfering with matters beyond your understanding," the man said. "Cease your work immediately." Reeves tried to swallow the fear rising in his chest. "Who are you?" The man blinked once slow. "We are the ones who watch." Then, without another word, he turned and walked out the door. Reeves lay awake until morning, his mind racing. When he finally worked up the nerve to check the security cameras, the footage was gone. The final disappearance. Daniel Grayson had spent months on the run. He knew the men in black wouldn't stop. But he had one last chance, one final way to expose the truth. He arranged a meeting with a contact, someone inside the Pentagon, someone willing to listen. They planned to meet in a safe house outside of Denver. Grayson never made it. The house was found empty, the door unlocked, his belongings still inside. His car was in the driveway, keys in the ignition. But Grayson was gone. The only clue left behind was a note, scrawled hastily on a scrap of paper. "They are not human."
Guardians of the Unknown, the Roswell Echo. Just a few weeks after the Roswell incident, a rancher named Elias Rivera stumbled upon something peculiar on his vast property. It wasn't the scattered debris that everyone was talking about. It was something far more unsettling. Hidden amongst the twisted wreckage was a small, metallic object, smooth and cold to the touch. It hummed faintly, emitting a low, resonant vibration. Rivera, a man of simple means but sharp intellect, sensed that this object was not of this world. He carefully wrapped it in a cloth and hid it in his barn, intending to show it to someone he trusted. Before he had the chance, however, two men arrived at his ranch. They wore dark suits, their faces impassive, their eyes hidden behind dark glasses. They asked Rivera if he had found anything unusual on his land. Rivera, initially hesitant, felt a growing sense of dread as he looked at their stern expressions. He knew instinctively that these men were not who they claimed to be. He denied finding anything. The men in black didn't press him. They simply reiterated their question, their voices low and menacing. They knew he had something. They could feel it. The air around them grew heavy. Rivera, his resolve crumbling under their intense gaze, finally admitted to finding the object. He led them to the barn, his heart pounding in his chest. The men examined the object with an air of detached curiosity. They didn't ask Rivera any questions. They simply took the object, thanked him curtly, and left as quickly as they had come. Rivera never saw the object again, and he never spoke of the incident to anyone. The fear instilled by the men in black was too profound. The Philadelphia Experiment aftermath. The rumors of the Philadelphia Experiment, a supposed wartime experiment involving invisibility and teleportation, were already circulating in hushed tones when a young naval officer named Thomas Nichols began to experience strange side effects. He had been stationed on the USS Eldridge, the ship allegedly involved in the experiment. After the war, Nichols suffered from bouts of disorientation, vivid hallucinations, and a disturbing sense of detachment from reality. He also claimed to have fleeting memories of witnessing something truly horrifying during the experiment, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. One evening, while Nichols was at home, two men in black suits appeared at his doorstep. They knew about his experiences on the Eldridge. They knew about his symptoms. They told him that his memories were a threat, not only to himself but to national security. They offered him a deal. He could undergo a series of treatments that would erase his memories, or he could face the consequences of revealing what he knew. Nichols, desperate to regain his sanity and terrified of the implications of the men's threats, agreed to the treatments. His memories of the experiment faded, but the sense of unease, the feeling that something terrible had happened, remained. The Alaskan encounter. A bush pilot named Amelia Hayes was flying over the remote Alaskan wilderness when she encountered a massive, triangular craft hovering silently above the mountains. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was dark, sleek, and emitted no sound. Hayes, a seasoned pilot with years of experience, knew that it was not a conventional aircraft. She tried to radio her base, but her communications were jammed. The triangular craft then moved towards her plane, casting a large shadow over it. Hayes, gripped by fear, managed to regain control of her plane and fly away. When she landed, she reported the incident to the authorities, but they dismissed her claims as the product of fatigue and stress. A few days later, however, the men in black visited her. They knew about her encounter. They told her that what she had seen was classified and that she was to remain silent about it. They warned her that if she spoke to anyone about it, she would face serious repercussions. Hayes, shaken by their visit and their ominous threats, decided to keep quiet. She never flew over that part of the Alaskan wilderness again. The Nevada test site, deep within the Nevada desert, nestled amidst the desolate landscape, lies a highly classified military installation known as S4. Rumors have swirled for years about its true purpose. Some say it's a testing ground for advanced military technology. Others claim it's a secret base where the government interacts with extraterrestrial beings. According to these whispers, S4 is where the men in black meet with the Greys, a race of small, gray-skinned aliens. These meetings, it is said, are not friendly exchanges. They are tense negotiations, dealing with the growing threat of hostile alien entities. The Greys, it is believed, have warned the men in black about these entities, who seek to exploit Earth's resources and enslave humanity. The men in black, acting on this information, have embarked on a covert mission to counter this threat, silencing witnesses, suppressing information, and working behind the scenes to protect the planet from an alien invasion. The Nordic Warning, another group of extraterrestrial beings, known as the Nordic Whites, has also reportedly contacted the men in black. These beings, tall and fair-haired, resemble humans in appearance. They have warned the men in black about a different kind of threat, time travelers. These time travelers, it is said, are coming from a future where Earth has been ravaged by environmental disaster and war. They seek to alter the past, to manipulate the timeline for their own benefit, even if it means causing chaos and destruction in the present. The Nordic Whites have provided the men in black with information about these time travelers, their methods, and their objectives. The men in black, armed with this knowledge, have been tasked with preventing these time travelers from disrupting the timeline. They are engaged in a silent war against these temporal intruders, attempting to protect the present from the machinations of the future. This mission is fraught with peril, as the time travelers possess advanced technology and a ruthless determination to achieve their goals. The men in black find themselves caught in a complex web of temporal intrigue, where the past, present, and future are all intertwined, and the fate of humanity hangs in the balance.